This video is sponsored by Frontline Model Hobbies, your one-stop website for all your modelling needs. Check out the store for special offers, pre-orders and also aftermarket accessories. Check out their website. A big thank you to Frontline Model Hobbies. Hello and welcome back. Yes, this is part 2, or the painting stage, of Tamiya's Gloster Meteor F1 in 48 scale. Now, initially what I've done is I've primed it with a Tamiya acrylic and done the panel lines roughly with a black paint. Now, the actual main paint for the actual kit will be the standard RAF Fighter Day from Hataka's paint line set. Now, with Ataka, the best way to get the most out of these paints is to thin them to 1 inch of their life. Now, this does two things mainly. One, it makes your paints last a lot longer. Also, when you're actually painting, it does actually dry very, very smooth. Now, for this, I use Mr. Hobby leveling thinners. Attackers do have their own thinners and they are highly recommended. But because I didn't have any, I used Mr. Hobby leveling thinners and they worked really well. So as you can see, the actual pre-shading is still showing through on the painted areas, and that's exactly what I'm after. So once that was dry, I could go in with the sky and put the identification band around the rear side of the actual fuselage. Again, Attacker paints thinned to 1 inch of their lives and just nice steady thin coats just to make sure that you get that really nice finish. Now, there was one area which I neglected, and it was the part where you're seeing now with the undercarriages. It was a simple case of just applying a little bit more super glue, wait for it to dry, sand it down, and then you can go over it and paint it. Any sort of like rescribing you can do, you can do on the fly, but it's good to do it after your main priming stage. So when the actual medium sea grey was dry, I went in and lined it just slightly with some insignia white. Now, all it was doing was just highlighting the main panels, not the actual panel lines themselves. Again, just to give it a bit more of a dimensional look and, yeah, hopefully a bit more lifelike. And the same was done actually on the actual main undercarriage doors. So when that was done, my favourite bit, masking. With the main areas all done, it was time to actually do for the main paint. Now, Tamiya do supply a decent sort of like set of instructions to actually put you in the right sort of like areas of where the paints need to be. So I started off using Ocean Grey, which is part of the top camouflage, and it was just a very, very rough sort of like outline of where the actual demarcations between the grey and the green. Now, if you are that way inclined, you can do it completely freehand, which I have done in the past. But for this one, I just wanted a little bit more of a sort of like sharper demarcation rather than it being feathered. So once the Ocean Grey was done, I could go around just with a little bit of masking tape just to make sure that the demarcation was what I was on. With the Ocean Grey all dried, it was time for masking, and I didn't want to bore you too much with that. And then once that was done, it was straight on to with the dark green. Now again, this is heavily thinned with Mr. Hobby leveling thinner, and it is a very, very good application. Do take your time though, okay? Do it in very thin coats. The thinner they are, the smoother it is going to be. Take my word for it. So let's get a shifty on. With the main bulk of the green done, it was time to lighten it up a little bit. Now again, I used Insignia White, which is like an off-white, it's not pure white. And it's a simple case of just going around each individual panels, but once you've done a complete circuit of the actual kit, add a couple of more drops of the actual white and go into more the central areas of the actual panel lines, and then you'll get a sort of like progression of darker around the actual panel lines and lighter as you go into the more central parts of the panels. Again, you can repeat this process as many times as you want, and the same process was done actually on the ocean grey. Now, a point to note in all this painting stage is don't forget the actual canopy. I know it sounds daft, but the amount of times I've done it and I've painted the canopy, and once the canopy is fitted, it doesn't go with it. It's either lighter or shinier or whatever. So make sure you do everything, and that's including the pitot and the radio antenna. Now again, once you take the masking off, you can go back and fill in any sort of like areas which you think, do you know what, I missed that bit, I over masked that bit, I didn't mask that enough. Don't worry if you have, you can just simply go back and do it again. It is not really that much of an issue. Now with everything unmasked, what I did is I got a lens cloth and just rubbed the actual entire kit down with it. And yes, I did have a bit of peel there and it came off when I was unmasking it. But that was an easy fix. I just remasked it and painted it. But overall, yeah, I'm happy with the result. Some staining, some sort of like lightening up of the panels. Yeah, it sort of broke up the actual grey and the green. So yeah, overall I was happy. Once that was done then, I had to do the identification marks or the yellow bands on the leading edge of the wings, and they were done again with Hataka, and that was with a orange yellow. So then on to the silvery bits. Now again, I've used Hatakas. For silvery paint, I normally use AK Interactive's Extreme Metal, but as I was using Hatakas, I thought, do you know what, I might as well use Hatakas. It isn't as good, I will say, as AK Extreme Metals, but for this case, it will do. Now, with the silvering on this, it was a simple case of just popping it into the individual panels, which does break it up, so you just haven't got one solid slab of like silver or aluminium. The black is there and you can use it to break it up and to use some actual shadowing. Now, a good way of actually painting wheels or the hub is to get a very cheap stencil from your stationery shop, and you can place the wheel in the chosen aperture and you can paint it, and you more or less come away with a decent wheel hub, as it were. Now, I did paint the actual main wheel itself a rubber black, but I went in with a field blue just to add a little bit more sort of like wear to the actual tyre. Although it isn't that noticeable, it is there and it does catch the eye. So once that was done, it was a case of banging on with the actual engines themselves. Now, I was having one engine completely open and one closed. Now, the one that was going to be closed, I did paint black, and I did actually dry brush it just to give it a bit more of a life, as it were. But the one that was going to be open, what I did use was Extreme AK Interactive's metal paints with the that one and the aluminium. I can't pronounce that other one. Never mind. But anyway, painted on really nicely, and I thought, yeah, let's leave it at that. No extra wiring, no sort of like scratch building or anything else like that. It was a simple case of just paint it and install it. Now, as the painting stage comes to an end, it was now just a case of just popping in the smaller bits, as in the navigation lights, the pitot tube, and all the rest of the sticky outy bits. And that's it, ladies and gents. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for the next part, which will be deckling and weathering.